Gentlemen, and tarnished of all ages, how do you feel about flails? Personally, I love flails. As far as real-life weaponry goes, they're just one of my favorite things ever made. They look gnarly, and there's just something so extremely satisfying about using the swinging momentum to enhance the power of the strike, and something extremely visually satisfying about looking at a flail in action. But in Elden Ring, well, since the release of the game, they've been sort of a struggle as far as a weapon class goes, not all that powerful as far as their damage, and extremely short range compared to many other weapon options. This has suddenly been changed just ever so slightly, and well, it's been changed enough to make flails actually somewhat worth using again if you enjoy them conceptually, and this is all thanks to some changes in the recent patch 1.08 and also the slightly less recent patch 1.07. So today, I thought I'd take my shot at making flails properly good again, because god, I love flails. What were the specific changes to make this worth doing then? Well, in 1.08, we got an increase to both the speed and reach of attacks when dual wielding flails, as in when power stancing them. This is exceptional, obviously, as it is a very good way to use flails if you're going to use them. And distance was the main thing that it struggled with, so for obvious reasons, this is very good for us. In patch 1.07, there was specifically a buff to Bastard Stars, a magical flail, and it quite simply buffed the attack power of the weapon's skill, which was sort of silly beforehand as it was just a worse version of a skill another weapon had, but now it is actually quite decent, all things considered, especially when you buff it up properly. As well, I would argue this one is actually better than Wing of Estelle now as far as PvP goes, at least, as it covers a massive area rather than the small one that the weapon's unique skill affects. On that note, as far as PvP goes, this build is actually quite good. The reach of the weapon is still not colossal weapon level by any means, not spear level or anything like that, but the speed and distance increase has made you far more capable of trading with those weapons anyways, and often coming out ahead if you know how to play around your weapon skills. So, what have we done here? What all comes together to make this work? Well, first up, we are using the Bastard Stars Flail. If that wasn't clear already, this thing with its recent buffs is just about strong enough to focus your entire playstyle around if you really wanted to, and while it is a very important part of this build, we still do have a lot of other stuff going on. To get this flail, you need to trade in the boss remembrance at the Round Table Hold from defeating Estelle. On top of that, in our other hand, we are of course using another flail, as that is what lets us take advantage of the buffs to dual wielding them. And the specific one that we have is the Knight Rider Flail, and this is just the best scaling non-set Ash of War flail within the game. On this we have put the Gravitas Ash of War, as it not only fits thematically with Bastard Stars, but oftentimes if you use Bastard Stars in PvP, your enemy will try to keep their distance from you, and Gravitas simply makes that less possible for them to do. And then finally, we also have this weapon set to the magic affinity. You could technically set it to cold so it has both frost buildup and bleed buildup, but I messed around with that and sadly you just don't hit enough with specifically the left-hand weapon to actually proc either status on an average boss fight.
That's disappointing.
As far as the flail itself, this comes from killing the Knight Rider boss that spawns just west of the Castlemorn Rampart, Side of Grace, in the Weeping Peninsula. Gravitas is dropped by the Alabaster Lord enemy on the beach just west of the Seaside Rune, Side of Grace, in Limgrave. Then for our secondary weapon slots, you'll want yourself both a seal and a staff for this build, and the ones that I recommend specifically are the Carrion Regal Scepter, which is traded for with a Remembrance from Queen Renala, and the reason for this is that it's the highest scaling staff for our purposes that doesn't also cost extra FP to cast your spells with. As for the seal, I highly recommend the Golden Order seal, as we are obviously going to be intelligence focused, and you can get this one from a corpse at the Minor Airdrie Church, Side of Grace, in Outer Lane Dell. As for your armor today, you should be using the full Spellblade armor set, which you get in the Round Table Hold once Rogier is passed on, and this gives you a 2% buff per armor piece equipped to magic and cold damage weapon skills for a total of a 8% buff to both of the weapon skills that we are running. Past that, we of course have our talismans, which includes the Shard of Alexander. If you don't know how to get this, there are 3 steps in the process. First in the desert where you fight Radon, find and talk to Alexander, then southwest of the Seathwater Terminus, Side of Grace on Mount Gelmir, you'll find him again, and then finally just past the Dragon Temple Lift, Side of Grace in Crumbling Farazula, you'll encounter him one more time. This buffs all weapon skill damage by 15%, which is obviously quite good. After that, I recommend using the Magic Scorpion Charm. This boosts all magic damage by 12% at the cost of lowering your damage negation a fair bit. As a result of that, I recommend changing this out for when you do PvP to either the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman for a ton of physical damage negation, or the Erdtree Favor +2 talisman for good overall stat boosts. For your other 2 talisman slots, I recommend both the Rotten Winged Sword Insignia talisman and Millicent's Prosthesis, both of which boost your damage with successive hits without stopping and stack with each other. The reason for this is of course that we are power stancing flails. They hit quickly and they hit 2 at a time, and if you do get the opportunity to get a good combo of weapon hits going, this actually adds up quite a bit to boost your damage. To use both, you'll sort of have to do a New Game Plus run, as they are mutually exclusive rewards from the same questline. To get the Rotten Winged Sword Insignia, you have to complete Millicent's questline by assisting her the entire way. And to get the Millicent's Prosthesis talisman, you have to defeat Millicent either by attacking her after the Windmill Village step, or by challenging her instead of assisting on the final step of the questline. That's it for the equipment then, but we are far from done what makes this build strong. That said, let's quickly talk about our wondrous Flask of Physic. In here I recommend the Magic Shrouding Cracked Tier, which comes from the boss located at the Minor Air Tree in the northeast section of Liurnia. This boosts all magic damage by 20%. It's just really strong. We're using magic damage, you should use it. As well, I recommend the Thorny Cracked Tier, which comes from the boss located at the Minor Air Tree in the Consecrated Snowfields region. This has the same effect as the Rotten Winged Sword Insignia talisman and the Millicent's Prosthesis talisman. It just boosts the damage of successive attacks, which again we're sort of going for. Then we come to our spells.
Magic!
Shut up, you weirdo.
First, and arguably most importantly, is of course Terra Magica. This boosts all magic damage done when you stand inside of the circle, and for 3 seconds after you leave it, by 35%, which is just a massive buff. And you get this one from following the path all the way to the end in the Academy Crystal Cave, which is located here in Liurnia. Then we also have our classic buff incantations in Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. Golden Vow is a 15% damage buff and 10% damage reduction for 90 seconds after casting, and it can be found in the Corpse Stench Shack on the eastern side of Mount Gelmir. Flame Grant Me Strength is a 20% physical and fire damage buff for 30 seconds after casting that is found behind Fort Gale on the western side of Caelid, in between a couple of fire-spewing enemies. That's all that you'll need for PvE, but I have a few more recommendations if you're doing PvP as well. Law of Regression is a fun spell. If your opponent insists on buffing up for ages, you can just pop this to reset them and make them waste all their mana doing it. As we have tons of intelligence anyways, this spell is just really easy to stick in, you don't have to build for it at all. As well, feel free to use any gravity magic that you feel like. It all fits the theme of the build, as Estelle's a whole gravity thing, and it just gives you more options to use. Honestly, you should feel free to use any sorceries that you want. We have 80 intelligence, but you know, gravity magic specifically at least stays on the theme. With that, you know every little thing that matters when it comes to equipping within the build itself, so let's take one final stop and look at the attributes that you want to aim for as well. First up, you want to hit 80 intelligence. That is our main scaling attribute for both weapon damage and weapon skills, so it obviously matters quite a lot. Then you want to focus on vigor. 40 is doable, but 60 is a nice comfortable number to aim for. Then you need to hit 24 dexterity to be able to use both of our weapons. Keep in mind that the Millicent's Prosthesis talisman also gives you 5 dexterity, so you can undershoot this a bit if you are struggling for levels. 25 faith is required to use our buff incantations, and then the rest of your points split between mind and dexterity. Mind lets you cast more before drinking a flask, and dexterity just increases your damage as both weapons scale with it on top of their intelligence scaling. And that just about does it, everyone. What do you think about this? Making flails relevant again is a dream of mine. Again, I love flails conceptually, and they finally feel decent to use in Elden Ring compared to the way that they used to be. I hope you all enjoy this fun exploration into a new and funky build, and I hope you enjoy it if you decide to make it as well. Like if you like the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.